Sunyaji Lamona Yukadan Nishinga Trubunda Dami Ganana Rogu Yedran Chizamba Tamja Gado Daguche de Do Oya Datia Ane Kasore Sabengi Ane Shambashirala Titila Shana Chowami O Tinikase Kora Shana Ane Nijumin Dadela Shana Chansemi Zimbabwe tawa min chani oda shamba shida chani o sungtu singware raba ogosan di kandes yongware sana ani shijawe ne kaso sona minba tambon do seetera jiba imbare sona minba tambo do soma ani karere sana ani sona minba tambon do에 di 간절해서라 천디라 시나 초와민 시간라 체디 핀조라 된 안에 시에네 아니 가서 고슴 녀시 미게베 내라 자소나 아니 제와 치마 등 애선도 저지만도 제와 치마 편지기 내가 내지 마중아 연장 체디라 잖아 초와민 세디 말에 이장 손 치마 아니 가서래 온디리 된 개발전지도 아니 여기에나 아니 채딜라 마셴바 제와 치마 온디리 된 루제기 아니 소나 마인바 빵바기 그시 추즘데 송거와 연장 어디니 소나 민바 탐보도 세지발이야 채딜라 샤나 처음이
So then there's an instruction by Sakya Pandita, which is called freedom from the four attachments. And the first of these says that if you're attached to this life, then you're not a practitioner, a dharma practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, then we'll do the first one first. If you're attached to this life, then you're not a dharma practitioner. So this is exactly what is said also in the 400 verses on the practice of yoga, where it says that first you have to eliminate non-meritorious actions. So what this refers to is that if you're simply attached to this life, that is the pleasures of this life, and you can't give up your attachment to the happiness or pleasures of this life, your own peace, your own happiness. And instead, if you engage in non-meritorious kinds of actions, non-virtuous kinds of actions, out of that attachment to the happiness and pleasure of this life, then it's virtually inevitable that as a result of that non-virtue that you've created during the course of this life, that you will fall into one of the lower states of existence. And in that kind of condition, there's absolutely no opportunity to practice any kind of dharma or do anything at all, actually, so as to develop again the opportunity that we currently have, that is this kind of life of high status, within which we're able to do something about our situation by avoiding non-virtue and developing virtue, so as to ensure that we get this kind of life again in the future.
Oh yeah, 어서는 민바 담보도 세당 아니 대제보되라 아니 코라샤는 내주민 세가라 아니 가서로 코위 핀조함 코위 내발라 셴나 아니 코알랭 와르지고 내주 제삼매봐 뭐 정중해봐 인자 내주들라 간대주 고아래서 코와타다 동아지 라신도 떼네 아니 대라 믿어봐 믿어봐기 아니 로지적고 와 인장 아니 가서래 코알에 코위 핀조라 셴나 아니 내주 제삼매봐 대매봐 인자 봐도 다는 도바탕 세대기 어디니다 가서 차단 그 꾼에 랑데 아니 체디 피조라 셴바도 도야지 직송 거야 말
Then the second one is that if you're attached to samsara, you don't have renunciation. This means that whatever kind of good things exist within samsara, even the high states of existence and so forth, if you're attached to those, then you do not have the renunciation, which is the wish to completely abandon samsara, to cast it away, together with its causes. And therefore, if you have that kind of attachment to even a good form of existence within samsaric life, within the realm of samsara, then you have not yet developed renunciation. 시계비 니파 시계
바도 단에 도바당
바르다니
바도 단에 도바당.
So then the second line in the verse from the 400 verses is that in the middle one should turn away from self. Here this is referring to self-interest. 바르 다니 도바당
바도 단에 도바당.
I'm sorry, I misheard that. In the intermediate phase of practice, you should cast things away, meaning samsara here. You should give up even the pleasurable experiences that exist within samsara, or the high forms of life.
Oh yeah. Then 다 코에 핀조라 미니 코에 핀조라 안에 가서 코에 핀조 탐제 동아지 랑신도 된 통데 아니 동아녀라 시위 니시 타바지 이나양 대 안에 랑치보 안에 타바텐도 녀와 마도 알 현변 그 삼바 마인바 인장 다되라 현나 창세 마인 오 라니 지보 아니 코이 동아녀와 시위 니시 텐도 녀나 안에 장주게서 매봐 인장 랑 동아지 나와 동아라 메데비 나바치 안에 가서 코이 동아라 메데비 내중 치다르자 제바 티신도 안에 현 동아지네 섬전라 미내장 대다 안에 동아라 차와 대바 그 인지 제거와데 다디 송거아래 파도 단에 도바당 세들이 니 되니 송거.
So this second line also can be interpreted such that where it says that in the interim you should cast away everything. Here, this can also be interpreted in line with the third line out of the separation from the four attachments, which says that if you desire your own happiness, then you're not a bodhisattva. So what this refers to is that even if you've developed that renunciation that we've described, that is, you've recognized that even the most excellent kind of conditions that exist within samsara are of the nature of suffering, and therefore they're something which is to be cast away. Even with that kind of understanding, you've developed renunciation, and then based upon that renunciation, you've recognized that the only way to achieve real happiness is to achieve liberation from samsara. As long as you have that kind of attitude, which is simply interested in your own objective here, this means that is even the desire for liberation, but having that desire from a self-centered or selfish kind of point of view, then you're not yet a bodhisattva. So therefore, in the interim, or in the second line of the 400 verses as well, where it says that one should cast away everything, that refers also, we can read that as referring also to casting aside our own self-interest, cherishing ourselves more than we cherish others. And then by casting that away, we can develop the authentic desire to benefit others, the authentic beneficial attitude or wish to help others in a true way. And then based upon that, then we can develop actually the bodhicitta.
Oh yeah, then 가서래 전부 존나 따와 민 세대당 타마다시 꾼도바 시제비네 가서 타마다시 꾼도바 관계시에 파여인 세대다 집아 제고 그저래 다 배사자바랑 그 대장 민자 요아래데 전부 존나 따와 민 세가나 안에 가사다 쳐 아라신지 주어 전부 쳐나 안에 되나 아라신지 줘봐 전부 zimba tela 아니 라신지 주베 동화 때나 배서 매바 인자 zemba chuna tawa mi se o 시제에 가서 가서 봐도 다니다 타마다시 quyin도바 세제 타마다시 quyin도바 간사다 주 라신지 주와 짐베 따와 아는 노바데 노바를 셔바데 돈이도 셔럽지 그봐 오 된다위다 관계시에 파도인 세가나 대기 교수님이 남기를 봐 그봐 교 신비 충을 남기 투문 충을 한번 남기를 봐 된다 투문을 남기를 봐 아니 신비 남기를 봐오 된다 가르래서는 아는 아망아망 온도 송데 아니 아망아망 로자왕 온도 송데 타를 안에 교 신비 값지 아니 탑지조 군주 산주의 샘당 아니 셔라 동반이 마신도 기억하대 다 도스된 거야 말이야.
Then the last line out of Sakya Pandita's separation from the four attachments says that as long as one has apprehension, as long as one clings to an apprehension, one does not have the view. And there are different ways to interpret this, but we can interpret this in line with the last or the third line out of the verse from the 400 verses, in which it says that at the end one should reject all views, reject all views. And so the way to connect these two is by saying that the attachment to, or having an attachment to the apprehension of things refers to the misapprehension of things as existing by means of their own intrinsic nature. As long as we have that misapprehension of things as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature, then there's no place within us for the development of the view. We cannot produce within ourselves the view, correct view, that things do not exist by means of their own intrinsic nature. So this relates likewise to if we interpret that line in that way, then it correlates well with the statement in the 400 verses, which says that one needs to turn away from all forms of view. Here, view in that context refers to especially wrong view, or particularly to wrong view, and especially to the view that apprehends things as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic nature. So once one has done this, such that one understands these concepts in the correct fashion, and especially with regard to the last one, the understanding of the view in the correct fashion, then one is in a position to be able to produce the great compassion, and based upon that, likewise, bodhicitta. And then from that also, one can then enter into, with bodhicitta, one can enter into the stages of the path to awakening, which are explained in terms of the three types of person: the person of lesser scope, intermediate scope, and greater scope. Here, because this is being explained in terms of the Mahayana, the greater vehicle, then we say that the person of lesser scope, we're not actually practicing the practices of the person of lesser scope. Rather, we're doing this in a way which accords with, or is in accord with the way a person of lesser scope practices. Because if one is doing it as a Mahayana practice, one develops bodhicitta, and then develops the different phases of understanding the defects of samsara, or rather understanding first the value of a special kind of human life that we've attained, and then so on and so forth through the remainder of the stages of the path that are common to the person of lesser scope. Then one proceeds with bodhicitta, again, to engage in the practices of the person of intermediate scope, so as to develop renunciation of samsara in its entirety, and then proceeds further into the actual practices of the Mahayana as such, the practices which are pertain to the person of the greatest capacity or greatest scope.
Oh yeah, that 대다위 아니 사무 아니 돈이 또 비셔라당 야채와 아니 창조 그 셈니 저자 전에 때문에 다들 이제 저 마셔야 되라. 다 가서 네 임바 요삼주 강라 때문에提前的 미시 돈나 미스토 되버들래. 네. 야 대신찬이 다 숨바 산제지 7위 당이 대라 조바 쉬어거봐 가주바 대라 대라양 20月비 나네 아니 좀月비 나네 아니 수기 타야바提前了 수구 타야바 수기 주 타야바提前了 送바니 다 수구 주제 그 타야바提前了 送바데 Yeah.
Well, so now when we think that way, that the Mahayana is comprised of the profound, that is the view which understands emptiness as sort of that side of it, and then it's also comprised of method, which is the development of bodhicitta, as well as all of the practices that come out of or are based on that bodhicitta. So the Mahayana exists has those two dimensions, and thus we're here to study, to learn the way in which these are explained in this precious Garland. And so with that motivation, then we listen to the teaching. Today we've arrived at a topic which says that how one establishes that the sangiki chiwetani sangiki chiwetani
다 사제 막 갈리갈 걸 말해.
이게 subject 숨바 상계기 치외다니 때래.
수고주 타야바提前了 送바탕. 팀면지 되네 셰베 세바 셰와탕.提前지 되네 셰베 아니 세바 미제와 셰와 아니 돈이도 비텐도 지바탕. 티바치미 대마도나 당년 샤바 당년 샤바 르기 나와 미르바 제 subject 대체요 가나 다 담보디 수고주 타야바提前了 送바데.
So then we've arrived at the topic, which is establishing that the Mahayana is the speech of the Buddha by means of we have to understand that it's here in the Mahayana scriptures that it's taught, that the path, the Dharma is taught in its entirety. And we understand that from also recognizing the greatness of the Buddha, that it's the greatness of the Buddha enables us to establish that the Mahayana is taught or that the entirety or the Dharma is taught in a complete fashion in the Mahayana scriptures. And then there are multiple subdivisions of this. The first of these is showing that the Mahayana teaches, it's only in the Mahayana that the limitless causes of the physical embodiments of Buddhahood are taught, and that these are not taught we'll just start with that subject first, and then the other subjects will come as we proceed through the text. So this is the first topic.
Oh yeah, that is 연대 카드 3회에 대외 연대 3회 송 어디 강지 산제 난이체 특전 레세 디서지 세가라 연대 카드 타 3회 봐 세가라 아니 저부 산제 지나가서 저 타두비 아니 가서래 저 타두 받은 아니 루버리 제바기 아니 규이 내가서 아니 연대 난가다르 타예바 난가다르 삼예베 타예바 아니 사밤 루발레 아니 데비 내가수 데부게 아니 개위 연대야 삼예밤 아니 빠도 매바 중화대 안에 산재지 숨바 강기치를 강지를 강실 야.
So the first two lines say, this is verse 84 that we've arrived at. Since a victor comes from good qualities that are as inconceivable as space, then a victor is said to have inconceivable good qualities. So with respect to the good qualities which function as the cause for the condition in which the result has been completed, has been finalized, because they're like space, they're inconceivable. And because of that inconceivability, due to that inconceivability, then the result, that is, the good qualities of the victor, are themselves also inconceivable. And the Buddha has taught this inconceivability of the good qualities both in the causal state as well as in the resultant state.
Oh yeah, 나타나디 두 안에 타야 발래 수구주지 주 타야 발래 제부 안에 대외연대 3月바 산재 숨바 강기칠 안에 가서라 산재 당이 이제 특징 내세 디서지 세가는 군전 대지를 산재 당이 천비 난이 천비 특징라 샤바디 서다 유피숨 타야 발라 제부사 아니 타야 바 중아 아니 좀된 내지 특징 그 되는라 샤바디 아니 샤바리 치식 그래서
So because these limitless good qualities, which are like space, are explained, the Buddha has explained that has taught us that these limitless qualities of a victor, that is a Buddha, derive from these limitless good qualities which are like space. Then because he has taught this, and because of the greatness of the person of the Buddha, and the Buddha that has explained these things in the Mahayana, then it's imperative that we should accept this or have forbearance with respect to that. And this is in the last part of verse 84, where it says, "Hence one should admit the greatness of Buddhas as explained in the Mahayana," or instead of admit, the original here reads more, one should have forbearance for, or literally tolerate, accept is okay. Because of the greatness of the Buddha, the greatness of the person of the Buddha, that we should accept this as it's explained in the Mahayana.
Oh yeah, that. 3月바 세대 나 빠도 매바서 뢰 빠도 매바다 뢰 3주 매바 3지 매자바 오 지송거래 됐 3지 매자바 세 3月바 세대 3지 매자바 치다시나 주타 주 3지 3月바 빠도 매바다 주텔할 때는 대위원데 안에 3月바 빠도 매바 3지 매자바데 치다시나 된배 셰르부라 안에 출근지 풍보라 소베 타 시에삼 제외 좀 된대지 안에 산제 그 출근 그 풍보라 소와기 안에 채든지 요와 시에삼세 안에 샤르불라 추와 제베 샤르도 샤르 아니 샤르부 가르서나 파바 샤르 도디비 추점자야 미셰베 대나산에 다니지 대삼야야와 지미세 세디 다 가르친 거래서는 파바셰르비 산제지 연대 타야파 다쇼 안에 산제 그 출은지 풍부기 안에 풍부자면 미셰베 파바셰르 두지비 출음자야 미셰베 대나산 야 대바주다.
So then when we say here it's inconceivable, that also that means that they're immeasurable. That is, there's no way that anyone else could conceive or could fathom the extent of the Buddha's good qualities. That is, the good qualities that function as the cause of the physical embodiments of Buddhahood alone, and then the good qualities of the physical embodiments of Buddhahood themselves as the effect. In both cases, the extent of the good qualities is inconceivable, and here inconceivable entails measurelessness. They're not something that can be measured or measured by ordinary anyone else. And then if you say, how is it that these good qualities are inconceivable, then the answer is what follows. When the teacher asked Shariputra, do you understand, do you know the limit of the aggregate or the collection of ethical conduct, collection of ethical discipline of the Buddha or not? That's the question that the teacher, that is the Buddha, presented to Shariputra. And do you know that limit? And the answer here, or in the verse, it explains that in verse 85 it says, even just the ethics or the ethical discipline of the Buddha were beyond even Shariputra's ken, his knowledge. Why then one would not admit that the greatness of the Buddha is inconceivable? So when then when Arya Shariputra, for the good qualities of, since the good qualities of the Buddha were inconceivable or immeasurable, even for someone like Shariputra, then in the case of Shariputra wasn't even able to understand simply the collection of ethical discipline that the Buddha possessed. Then why wouldn't we accept that why wouldn't we accept that the good qualities which comprise the person, the greatness of a Buddha are immeasurable?
Oh yeah. 관례서 대나 산제 단지 첨부디 수림기 풍부 자양 미셔바 균전 대나 아니 산제 단지 첨부디 연대 삼지 미셔바 지 미세데 대답을 여바 이쳐바 잘라 저 지 미세데 대야 삼매 지 미세 세제 이시 교타야방 온도 마소나 교디스 아니 가사를 연대 타야바다 제지그 교타야방 온도 마소나 대부 타야바 미중배 산제지 연대 타야바 디치리 아니 산제그 연대 타야바다 주제지 디그 촌이 선남고 초단 이시그 초야 타야라 선남다 초 이시그 초 타야바 태양 조발 아니 특징이 되네라 땜바 인상 특징 팀에 특바치는 거 되네 니지나네 특바치면 되네 코나라 땜베 네발 아니 특바치 못 가르쳐야 그래.
So this is something that we definitely ought to believe, that the Buddha possesses these kinds of qualities which are inconceivable. If even Master the Arya Shariputra was unable to understand, to measure even that one portion of the Buddha's good qualities, then of course this is something that shows that it's inconceivable for ordinary persons. And if there's no cause which is limitless as a prior condition, then there's no effect which is limitless as the result. And that being the case, and since the good qualities of a Buddha are limitless, then it's only based upon a limitless the two collections, the collection of merit and the collection of gnosis. It's only based upon them being limitless that it's possible for the good qualities of the Buddha to arise in terms of both the physical embodiment arising out of the collection of merit, as well as then the Dharmakaya arising out of the collection of gnosis. So without that limitlessness, it's not possible for those good qualities of the Buddha to arise, and therefore those are, since those are taught only in the scriptural collections of the Mahayana in a complete fashion in their entirety, then we definitely have to accept that the scriptural collections of the Mahayana are the speech of the Buddha.
Oh yeah, that is la. You want to make it done in a shabby, Sabashawa said it. That the river should you with Java travel, do the Timen Pabala, Tombani Tova. 차원 두 배가 더 찍들이. 그러나 팀행도 또 배대. 인자 티진지 되네네 셰버게 아니 세 미제 시와데 돈이 되비 텐도 찍바나. 사바다 미쳐 왔어. 다 리바 주주에 저와를 참비 티진기 되네래. 팀행도 강동아디 말려봐 빵와. 강동아데 말려봐 빵바 사자니네 이품비 동아데 말려봐 빵와 사자니네 품비 동아데 야바 빵와 아 동아데 창와 주와 동아 세바 아니 강동아데 말려봐 빵바 아니 가서래 야바 빵와 가서 그러면 세바 되자단 차와 세바 아니 녀모 발라서에 되자단 차와 동아고비 고바니와 시와 누바 셰외 파티 다디 풍부텔라 마샤 다다그 풍부텔라 야차 다다그 풍부데 아니 가르소레 동아마 다다그 풍부도 동아말리바 빵바사 다디 풍부 뽕빵마라 차 다디니 마 동아현지 참 미줘봐 세가나 마오바 깨와 렌지가 풍부빵바라 차이가나 동아현지 참 미줘신 아니 미중 미제완디니 다 동아 미제완디니 아니 가서 동아빵비 빵바데라 원고바 시와 차는 내중시 요아 인장 시와다 차노바데 디다 풍부탄장 야바 빵바 사장님이 풍부탄장 야바 빵바 아니 풍부되게 주세바 세바 아니 여자단 차와 고바 아니 냥알랜 대와고 세기 다디기 대서 그 소리 기보디 가소래 니 세바 세바 제당 아니 세바다 미제와 시와게 세바 니오테 아니 다 주바 돼야도 오라 통그래 아니 세바 시와서리 디체
세바 미케와
세바 시와서리 여기 팀에지 되는 셰비 세바 시와 세바 시와서 네 어디 특징 되는 장도된 네 팀에 그 되는 인 탄장하지 이게 팀에 되는 세바 시와도가 되라 특징 팀에 그 되는 예섬도 대대셔 대 특징 되는 세주 다들 잡아 주시라샤 아이 네 팀에 되는 매바디 뭐
chen 요래 chen
네 팀에 되는 인산 대장아 대 특징 되는 장샤디 야 하고서
하고서
같이서
니마소
예 팀에지 되는 셰비 세바 시와니 세디 다중이 뒤주고 다가라라 바바 셰리 비엔다 다쇼 세디
teaching 시비 park chen chen 요래 chen takchingi shepa ne chikpana shepe bar kubung
티진지 되는 셰비 샘미지 셰바 돈이도 유턴도 찍바나 자 년대그 되냐라 세바 셰바 세대당 티진그 되냐라 셰바 그 세바다 미제바 셰바 니가 돈이도 유턴도 찍바라 자도 오그래 오마게 티바체라 제메데 현지 세바 돈바니 세단 미지 퇴지 찍바 퇴지 세바 저대练 거래我得练过，对我了嘛练过的，是吧？特别起来姐妹的，先去三把当把你，三当每节天都你九把天去三把去，什么啥叫我们得练过，对大了。
对，我了，十把就。
这我了听几些，我了听几些，但这地当嘛的，三把小的，但多的。
So here then, it's next topic is that one should understand one should understand what is meant by extinction as it's explained in the scriptural collections of the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle. And the discussion of this begins by saying that
아니 누가 현재 참 미조신 시와는 양알에 다오 시가라 마음 풍부를 마제.
So then it's the beginning here is the explanation of how it is that one should understand the extinction, which is explained in the Hinayana lesser vehicle scriptural collections. The discussion here begins by saying that the extinction which is explained in the scriptural collections of the greater vehicle is understood to be is understood in the sense of the realization or understanding of emptiness in the sense of non-origination. So what is being presented here then is the argument that what one finds in the Hinayana scriptural collections when it talks about the extinction of suffering and so forth, extinction of the aggregates, that comes down to the same point as the non-origination, which is expressed in the scriptures of the Mahayana, where they're discussing the way in which we understand emptiness. So this begins, the beginning of this discussion is given in the commentary on the 60 verses of reasoning by the master Chandrakirti. And there he begins by saying that in the scriptural collection of the greater vehicle, there's a passage which is cited from a sutra, and this is the meaning of this is given as follows. One who has entirely eliminated or so one who has completely abandoned the entirety of this suffering. Now the word "this" here is referring specifically to the suffering aggregates, the present condition of the suffering aggregates. So one who has abandoned this suffering, referring again to the present aggregates, entirely abandoned that suffering, who has definitively abandoned that suffering, who has purified themselves of that, who has extinguished them or caused them to become extinct, who is separate from desire. Desire here stands for the other mental afflictions as well, desire, hatred, and ignorance. And who has actualized cessation, who has completely or has actualized the cessation of the current aggregates, and who has entirely pacified the current aggregates such that they have disappeared. Okay, this entire line here in the text is again in reference to the current state of the suffering aggregates in the case of an arhat who is actualizing nirvana. And then the next portion of the text says that such a person will not make a connection with other suffering. Now, 동아 쟁기 참미 조신.
동아 쟁기 참 조신. 거알에서 동아 쟁기 참 조신 이거는 뭐봐 아니 동아 참 미줘봐.
So then this person, once they've extinguished the current state of the suffering aggregates in that way that's been described, then they will not connect with another state of the suffering aggregates. What this means, in effect, is they will not take rebirth within samsaric existence because they will not form the connection with another life that has that kind of suffering quality to it. And by not making that connection with another instance of the suffering aggregates, they will not arise in the future. And this non-origination here, so the word non-origination appears in this text, which will be discussed further as we go along. This non-origination is the sublime peace. Peace in the most sublime form, and then it says to wit, it is the definitive abandonment of the entirety of the aggregates. It is the extinction of craving. It is separate from desire and the other forms of mental affliction. It is cessation and it is nirvana. So this quotation then introduces the topic under discussion in that way.
Oh yeah, that's yang dole kanya jewa sedo, changba jedo, ani chawa cheso se kana nimo bambe chawa cheso, dile ani seba shen misoso, she sumbagi ani ten dubanas, da riba chujibi drivi kaso shiba shewa sede. 니모 시바 시와라스기 제소를 일하스 대양 팀엔 라좀 토비체나스 팀엔기 라좀 바 토비체나 아니 딱 얘기 가소래 다 얘기 세바다 미지와 시와 세바 시와다 미지와 시와 세디 팀엔 라좀 토비체 다기 제와 세도 냐비 시와테 라시지 제와 메바 시위 텐도 아니 어디 다 가소래 특징이 돌아샤바 나시 란신지 개와 매바 시위 텐도 내가 샤고 그래 샤고 송대 봐 가르레에서는 현도나 동아마당 가위 치료 내년 그 개와 세바잖아 마세바체 봐 동아마당 가위 치료 양세 치마 인잠 조비 개와 세바라 양세 치마 인잠 줘봐 그 깨와 세번 바실라야 셔봐 메루스 다 니랑 다 줘봐 대다 니네 양세 치만 인잠 미줘봐 인잠 줘봐 깨와 인잠 줘비 깨와 세번 바실라야 셔도 미룬데 와 미룬바 가래서나 다 사제기 뒤나양 사제기 뒤나양 세가나 아니다 개묘기 텐도 주와라 권해서 다 사제 가산디 디요마 가상나라 샤임바 다 사제 생각들라 란주바 면제 그 조단지당 탄주의 조단지 그 이체네 그러와 탄주의 조단라 지디간라 사명에라 톰네 사제 제라 도와체 란주바 면제 그 사제에라 제네 사명 제라 도와 그래서 임바 그러와 사제지 뒤나야 개묘도 주와라 권해 사제 제라 인장 안 사제지 뒤나 개묘도 주와라 권해 간 디시 예수 숨바 탕양 양스 메지 왕도 전에 前是杨起起码没接往对前呢，东岸先去写完了，两个人电话写完个毛病碰不成没做完了，这个的是
디 락체 디 가서 랑루
他这几天呢，姐妹几天都做完了，过年是吧？他这些的，他我们来写讲了，东岸去碰不他们的结尾跟那个那样，结完没被推的下过来是。结完没被推的下过来是呢，让心去结完没吧？让心去结完没吧？来讲呢，是吧？他这个推呢也完结，我们给他讲那些讲了，是吧？
我嘛
讲
딘데 작으로 해.
让心去结完没吧？他这按了特别，他们结了特别往多钱呢，他这去推呢，让心去结完些吧，加小个人。连年给结完三百加超过嘛的是，连年就往个钱有碰不的有啊，是吧？真的对，有啊，人场三百的加超过嘛的是个样子的，
니 고츠 마선 공다. 락체 디 랑규야 아메
他这就团呢，姐妹的团队就啊老光呢，谁讲了？他这个团队姐妹的就啊谁讲了？东岸就碰不他们当结尾哪个洛阳，刚才对了，东岸就碰不结当结尾哪个土壤。让心去结完没吧，是吧？让心去结完没吧了，现在加出过来，连年去结为碰不下巴的时候呢，加出过嘛的，连年结碰不马下巴的吧，是吧？碰不他妈的结那个了，好过说，
가고 맞아. 락체 디 랑루야 가서 죽다 오마 기 락체.
东海去碰不他妈的结尾，咱准备的了，东海去碰不但连比那个啦。结完没把谁的，让心去结完三把全呢，加出过来，让心结完三把了吧，是吧？那真的，你刚说的，连年去结完三把的外是呢，加出过嘛的，真的连年给结完马三把了吧？我这是我的，
I'm sorry, I'm really struggling with something here in the text.
不是进来读哎，进来的。아니 그저 자 이거 그제이다. 잡고 이래면 뭐고. 그것이 야 얘는 뭐야. 아, 니인다. 사제 되라. 지당 사제 당 하면 돼 가서 가서 샤샤를. 是吧？他们现在的看着的是呢，让就把面前给东亚就碰碰他们当吃完了，他们当东亚就碰碰他们的结完了，他这东亚就碰碰他们的结完了，这就他对俺了，他们第一就是他们的结了透过来，是吧？让他认为路了，他在当他们说的开始呢，你电脑工具话你比七八多钱呢，电脑工具他们没把钱干了。他们按了头，他才接了头过来，啊，他等着你是吧？那
John, you can do it.
Yeah, maybe.
那等你，他这就推呢，姐妹推的就话谁的，俺都是那个的是吧？他东亚就碰不到他们的结为哪个给大众不提，他们的这个东亚就碰不他们的结话有是吧？东亚就碰不马啥不是吧？三把谁的让心去叫我三把了钱呢？有啊的，叫我三把。东亚就碰不他们的叫我三把了钱呢，马三把的，当然故事就觉得呀。
So, according to Madhimika Prasankika and Yogacarans, all the lower school, how they define the with the remaining and without remaining arhat. So with the remaining arhat is defined through remaining the aggregate, which is through the karma and afflictions, and not the remaining once they overcome this aggregate, which is through the afflictions. That's how it's defined. According to Prasankika, is another way. Say slightly different. reminding our heart, based reminding, not from the point of view of reminding the aggregate ways that thrown by common affliction. It's basically reminding point of view, appearing of a truly existence or not, appearing of truly existence, reminding or appearing of truly is non-reminding. So that's how Prasangika sees. So from that point of view, according to Prasangika, when you achieve our heart, first you obtain the non-remaining our heart, and then after that, remaining our heart. Totally another way. According to Madhyamika Swatantika school, there goes remaining our heart first, then later non-remaining our heart. So now over here, the text, there's although this one's according to Prasankika, now here it's mentioned that non-remaining our heart. In the right around here, the commentary mentioned. So non-remaining in terms over here, which is saying that it is Rangshingi Kyewa Meba, non-inherent production. Okay, just this is a non-remaining from that point of is not from the point of view of how usually Prasankika are going to define. Over here, this is a non-inherent production. Rangshingi Kyewa Meba Sunya di Rangshingi Lenyungi Kyewa Meba Sungorwa Lo.
And could
Akche, yeah. Yung Rangshingi Kyewa Meba Hachiki Tuna Yang Kyewa Meba Yugun. So Rangshingi Tanda Hakche Sunya di Rangshingi Kyewa Meba Sunya di Gang Hakche Kanti Janan Gun.
Oh, yeah. 나야. 나 전 주시야. 그래서 여보 고구면도. 그래서 고해내면 다 주소. 야, 다 가셔서.
네, 락체기 두나. 락체기 두나양 케메기 둔도 교어 오네. 디 락체디 가사
라제 그 되나 깨물 그 된도 교화라 고네. 디 안들이 안들이 된 니시 니지 숨바데 양시 치마 면접 양시 치마 미제위 왕도 전에 동안 니시 동안 현지 시와데 다 먹어 니마 진짜 좋아라 자 미좋아라 잘했어. 와. 전다 누스 쓰고 가려 가서래. 다 엄마가 전부 유지만도 니 개와 새도 새데 아니 라신지 개와면 베나테 와라 가세요. 님은 되네 새지로 새지. 님은 되네 새지로 새데 가르친 거래서나 아니 내만에 님은 대다 라신지 새봐. 내만에 님은 라신지 새봐라 전에 라신지 개와면 봐서래 대고 거라. 그봐. 어 인간 디 새봐데 내만에 님은 새봐라 맞아봐. 라신지 미제봐. 맞아봐 그 내만에 새봐라 맞아봐. 아니 니모 아니 가서래 깨워서 봤잖아 sana 깨워서 봤잖아 제대잖아 아니 깨워서 되잖아 사매도 냥알래 되디가라 가사 명아래 얘랑 다져 봐 사매도 냥알래 되잖아 가사 주의쳐 버려 로 아니 냥대도 운도 챙겨 매봐 냥대 로 가사도 유디 냥대도 마주 냥대도 유디 아니 강사대 맞죠. 저 깨워서 말했잖아. 인간 네 깨워서 봤을 때 라시지 깨워서 말했고 그래.
So so what is being said here is that going back to the previous page of the commentary, it says also from the sutra that one who has extinguished has completely extinguished birth. The arising of things is someone who resorts to or relies upon pure form of practice. They have completed their job. They will not go from this existence into another existence. They don't know that kind of going from this existence into the other existence. So this portion of the text where Master Chandrakirti is quoting another sutra, he gives then a explanation of this, a summation. And then in the summation of this meaning, likewise from the 60 verses on reasoning, where it says in the sutra passage that this person knows the extinction of things, that things have been extinguished. What is that? What's the meaning of that? Well, the way to understand this is in terms of the Mahayana interpretation of non-arising, that is, in terms of emptiness, so that we can't understand this or interpret this in the same way that, say, the Shravaka tradition does, where they say that when a person actualizes arhatship, they first of all, they actualize nirvana with remainder, in which there's some remainder of the aggregates continuing from the previous, when they take birth, the birth in which they achieve arhatship, then they actualize nirvana during that life, but there's still the remainder of the aggregates until they cease, that life ceases. Then at the termination of that life, when they pass out of those contaminated aggregates that they took up by karma and mental affliction in the previous life, then there's the cessation, the stoppage of the continuity of those aggregates altogether. So if you take that kind of interpretation of nirvana, then one would say that during the period which one has nirvana with remainder, that is after one initially actualizes nirvana, then the person exists, and there's no way that there could be the actual cessation in total of the aggregates as such, because the continuity of that person continues to exist. Now, at the termination of that life, when the arhat actualizes nirvana without remainder, according to the Shravaka tradition's interpretation of this, then one would, the continuity of personal existence of the arhat comes to a cease. So there's no, at that time, there's no person of the arhat that would know the extinction of the aggregates. There's no person to function as a knower. So what's being explained here then is that that being the case, then we have to understand these passages from the sutra as supporting the prasangika position that when someone actualizes arhatship, in the case of the development of understanding of, first they have to develop the understanding of emptiness, they have to realize it directly, and then through that meditation on emptiness, they eliminate all of the various kinds of mental afflictions together with the seeds that produce the mental afflictions. And so in the course of doing that, they never necessarily have to actualize a kind of understanding of emptiness in which there's the actual disappearance of the appearance of things as being real. That is, in the context of the understanding of emptiness, where one has a direct perception of emptiness, the appearance of things as being real disappears in its entirety. And then, as we've said previously, so that, according to the Prasangika school, that initial understanding of emptiness in which there's the appearance of things as being real has disappeared, as similar to the way like a sun sets or the moon sets. The same metaphor is used here for the disappearance of the perception of things as being real. So that, according to the Prasangika system, is the nirvana without remainder. And as we said previously, this, according to Prasangika, then we actualize that form of nirvana first, and then subsequent to that, or a person actualizes nirvana with remainder. That is, they return to the things, they come out of that meditative absorption on emptiness, and things appear again as if they were real, although they understand by virtue of having realized directly shunyata, or emptiness, that things do not exist as the way they appear. They appear to exist by means of their own intrinsic nature, but they don't have that kind of existence. So that nirvana with remainder then is such that if one interprets these passages from the sutras here, and this even includes some of the Hinayana sutras, the sutras that are held within the scriptural collections of the Shravaka tradition, the Hinayana tradition, the only way to make sense of these passages is by interpreting them actually in accordance with the way that the Prasangika does, such that during the course of one's life as an arhat, one necessarily has to understand emptiness, realize emptiness in order to actualize arhatship, or even before that, one has to realize emptiness in the manner of this disappearance of even the appearance of things as being real. So when the commentary here in the 60 verses says that person that understands extinction, this refers then to the Shravakayana Arhat at the time one attains at the point or the time one obtains arhatship, according to the Hinayana, that is the lesser vehicle. They necessarily have to have they have a thought that my birth has ceased. There's an extinction. That knowledge of the extinction of birth arises, and that must definitely be explained in the sense of understanding that things do not arise by means of their own intrinsic nature. If you interpret it otherwise, then it would contradict the previous sutra that was just quoted above, where it refers to the knowledge of extinction, that passage up there. And therefore, it's also not appropriate to explain this in the sense of the mere extinction of birth, extinction of rebirth in the sense of making a connection to another form of existence in samsara. And therefore, it's necessary, and because this passage of the sutra entails that we understand it, that it has the intention in this that non-origination or non-arising has the meaning of not arising by means of intrinsic nature. This sutra passage has to be interpreted in that way, such that it applies even in the time of nirvana with remainder. That being the case, since we understand this non-arising, not in the sense of, or we have to interpret these sutra passages not in the sense of the non-arising of continued rebirth in samsara. Rather, we have to understand them in the sense of non-origination or non-arising, which means, in effect, the absence of intrinsic nature, or that things don't arise by means of their own intrinsic nature. And that's the case here. So,
양세 체만 메제위 치리 왕도 세나 동아 현지 시와데 마음을 풍불라 자네 양아랜다고 셰송해야 돼다 공도 써야 돼 된다디 아니 디숨바레.
So then up above in the passage of the sutra where it says this, one who understands this. The word "this" is a specification. It's specifying a specific case here. So therefore, if one interpreted that word "this" in the sense of not taking rebirth into a continued existence, then we wouldn't be able to understand what is the rest of the passage would not make sense, because the subsequent part of the passage refers specifically to the form of nirvana, which is not the form of nirvana, which is not taking up some other form of the contaminated aggregates, that is taking rebirth and samsara. So therefore, where the sutra passage says this, it's referring to this context of the nirvana with remainder, where the arhat necessarily has to have understood this sense of non-arising, which here is referring to non-arising by means of intrinsic nature, or in effect referring to emptiness as it's understood in the Mahayana tradition.
Oh yeah. That in yaga kondo ribatuju vete dungan dishewa chita cheta la jube ane yagi seba tang goba se de nyamon tata se jing mijewa la gomba re sana oda chita ji tuen la shetu miru na chita de ji tuen la sheba jaya mena ane cheta la she gona yang tanda di ane ji dine sheba la gawa yuwa ma pumbo ge cheta nyamon la jam nyamon la jam me go ba ra 아니 얘네지 풍부 되네 아니 시아바라 가와주 사제요 말에.
So then someone might come back and say, well, where it says this suffering, this word "this" here is the application of a general term to a specific case, and therefore it has the intention of the non-arising in the sense of the extinction of all of the mental afflictions. So someone might come back with that reply to the argument that Master Chandrakirti has just made above. However, if it's not appropriate to, if there's a case where it's not appropriate to explain a general term in the sense of the general meaning of the term, then one necessarily has to explain it with respect to the particular case, the specification that's at issue here. And here, there's nothing at all, there's no contradiction at all in explaining this specification based upon the general term here, that the term "this" has to be interpreted in that connotation of the specific case.
That in it is yella. Tanda kasore subject to kung cheni. Ra time doing a sabasheva said Tajundi. Tibachela came at the Shanji Sabat Tombani. Said a Meji tendo Nichiba Tuji Sheva Jiri. Segala Tibachi be done, Rashinji Jawa Goba. Dambatang, Rashinji Jawa Meba, Rashinji Jawa, and a Saba Dambatang. Shenji days, Shenji Saba Tombani, Shenji de Nyande Deva Chuk, and a Nyera, Nyande Deva Cherangi, and a Sanjaji Kat Debegi. Tiba may be done, Yagate Jetan Timag done in some Tiba may be done, teaching done Slavtua, Tiba may done in Sado, God Debi Tiba may be done la. 아니 세바 세게 세바단 되자다 차와 세게 세바 아니 세바 동반이 땜바 이 세바다 미집이 텐도 세바 세데 아니 도만에 세바다 도만에 라시지 미집이 텐도 라 라시지 세바당 라시지 미집이 텐도 지바 대시와 마세 미제 위천도 양 집에 세바 라시지 세바 특바 추정구 되는 세바 소마데 라시지 세바다 미제 위천도 집바다 미제와 시와 세야 대양 세바다 미제와 라시지 세바다 라시지 미제와 시비 텐도 집바 대체를 안에 특바 집에 되는 까임바 가인바데 계랑 메서바 치매가 너희도 서바 지시 세다라 세다 미지 된도니 직배 대지 서바지 주장은 오야.
So the next verse continues on this. I've changed the translation considerably here, and I'm just going to read mine instead. The non-origination taught in the Mahayana and the termination taught for other Buddhists are both emptiness. Therefore, one should admit that termination and non-origination are in fact the same. Then the commentary here explains that, therefore, in the scriptural collections of the Mahayana, there is taught cessation in the sense of things not existing or things not having any kind of arising. Let me start over on that. In the scriptural collections of the Mahayana, it is Rangchingi Kiwa Mepe Kokpa Tempatan. Rangchingi Kiwa Mepe.
연두지 대와 아까 대바기 팀에기 되네래 세바 동반이 담반이 오데 세바 담반이 오데 아니 세바다 미지비 텐도데 세바다 미지바세 가랑신치 세바당 미지비 텐도 지바당 대시와 대한 랑신치 세바 시와당 안 미지바 시와 아니 tenchibe.
So in the scriptural collections of the Mahayana, cessation is taught in the sense of the non-existence of origination by means of intrinsic nature. And likewise, in other traditions as well, in other traditions, that is where it says in the other for others in the root text, this refers to the Shravaka schools. So you Shravaka schools accept in the scriptures of the Hinayana, which you accept yourselves as the speech of the Buddha. In those scriptures, there is the teaching of the termination, stoppage, or cessation of things in the sense of emptiness. These two teachings have to be understood in the same sense. That is, where it says cessation or termination, and this teaching of cessation or termination has to be understood in the sense of non-arising or non-origination. And what we mean by non-origination here or non-arising is that things are primordially unoriginated. They're primordially unarisen by means of intrinsic nature. That is, there was no time ever in the past, present, or future that things ever have, ever will, or are arising by means of intrinsic nature. So that is the sense here of non-origination or non-arising. And that teaching that one finds in the Hinayana scriptures, the sutra collections and so forth of the Hinayana schools, those where they teach termination or cessation, it's necessarily the case that in some of those scriptural passages, which are accepted as the words of the Buddha by Shravaka schools, some of these scriptural passages necessarily have to be interpreted in the sense of non-origination, as we've just mentioned it, this primordially non-originated nature of things, meaning that things do not, and will not originate by means of their some kind of intrinsic nature. So then, therefore, this termination by means of intrinsic nature, that is, things are terminated by means of intrinsic nature. They don't have any kind of intrinsic nature whatsoever. And they're not arising by means of intrinsic nature has the same meaning. And knowing that termination or that non-arising of things is, since la deshepa, zepa mi,
대시바 세가나
대시바.
세바 시바다
sepa shepa,
아 미제와 시바
ikewa shepa, dunchik. So since it's the case that this knowledge of those, that is, knowledge of this termination and knowledge of, or termination, or you could translate that also as extinction, knowledge of extinction, and knowledge of that, as well as knowledge of non-origination, necessarily are of this, have the same meaning. Therefore, it's appropriate to accept, to take it as something that is you can believe in, that the scriptural collections of the Mahayana are the speech of the Buddha.
오야 다디 제라 동니 상제 체다니 대다리베 제대나 티진 주시 레송바 캐와 남라 지면에 세우다 사무 동반이 제자와데 아니 티바 쳔보기 아니 남지 미바 남다 남지 미바 타도 와 남지 미바 오텐 동반이데 아니 상제기 아니 추구기 당이 라시 동병 라시 동병 당이 ngāra xeba tētār āni rīpē āni gyūnzhēn la tēnā gyūnzhēn ji jēsu tēnā sī rīpē jēsu tēnā tīshēn ji dēnē tāng tētār rīpē jē tēnā tīshēn ji dēnē tāng jīshē tūmēn ji dēnē la sūmbā oda tāmbatāmbā ni sūmbā kēwā nām la kā yīmī āni jī mēnyam jē 산제지 티전 까마 임바다 안에 가서 팀에 산제지 까마 임바게 진매년대 매년비 준제 매진 아니 네가 산제지 까 임바게 주제 타야 봐줘야래.
So the next verse further explains this. It says, if through reasoning they see the doctrines of emptiness and the Buddha's greatness in this way, how could wise people not maintain that the Mahayana and the others are the same or equal? I would translate this as equal. So here, emptiness, so-called emptiness, is the ultimate object of the path. That is, it's the ultimate thing which is an object of observation of the path. And likewise, it is the nature, or it says the Sangye Chimpu Chukyu Dagni.
산제지 추구 다니 ngāra xeba tar. 산제 추구 다니 세 라시지 도베 다니 인자 스기스기로 추구 다니.
So the entity of the Dharmakaya, of the great Buddhas. Here, entity can be translated as well as nature, the basic character of the Dharmakaya, of the great Buddhas, is this emptiness. That is the basic character of the Dharmakaya. As previously explained, then if one views this in accordance with reasoning, uses rational investigation to observe this and investigate this, then who that is intelligent, who that is learned and intelligent, would not consider that the scriptural collections of the Mahayana, and on the other hand, the scriptural collections of the Hinayana, if you think about these, is it the case that they're equally the speech of the Buddha or not? Then if someone is intelligent and discerning and properly investigates this according to the kinds of reasoning that have been presented up above in the earlier portions of the text, then such a person would find that there's no reason at all that could possibly establish these two scriptural collections as not equally being the speech of the Buddha. And on the other hand, there are limitless proofs that they are in fact equally the speech of the Buddha.
오야 다되니 다 티바 첨부 된 마도 나양 티바 첨부가 아니 전다 마시에 나양 아니 티바 첨부 땅념수 샤바 마소 티바 첨부라 아니 꾸와드 주와 말에 스카 마일지세 아니 꾸와드 주와 말에 세야되라 땅념수 아니 샤바 리지 티바 첨부라 다마음 아니 꾸와드 주면 꾸와 미데바테 다마 미르바텔라 지신시공 송반남 시와라미 테이체 지신 시에베 아니 타도 그 티바 찍도 주바 권에 시 송반남 시와 라와 명바 테이체 지신 시와 그 아니 지신 그 티바 송반남 시와 라와 마인바 테이체 티바 찍도 세바당 타도 그 티바 찍도 세바당 아니 좀 된대지 타도 그 티바데라 아니 티바서 나바샤바 타도 그 티바 숨숨바데 아니 좀 된데랑 그 공바 마인바 아니 두지 삼바다 tum바 숨바인바데 공데 숨바지 타도 그 티바 숨숨바 치마 공데 숨바 인지 좀 된대지 공식원에데 말해 티바서 나바샤바데 공바제 인지 천이반이 많이 넣어 다 좀 된대지 티바소 남바샤바데 공바 시도 창고와를 말을 창고와를 만도 천이바 말에 마인바 가르에서 타도 그 티바 찍도 줘바래 이 중국어로 대인상 아마라 고와미 고반다바 미차데 아니 티바 준비 돼 마도 나양 아사 티지 티바 순사바 땅님 기니 다 순차 세가 돼 마도 나양 땅님서 샤바니지 아니 라니 순와 치고래
So the next verse explains that if you don't understand the meaning of the greater vehicle, then it's appropriate to leave it alone, to leave it aside, but it's inappropriate to get angry about it. One should simply set it aside. So the verse here explains, in verse 88, what the Tathagata stated with a hidden intention is not easy to understand. For this reason, there is said to be one vehicle and also three. Therefore, protect yourself by being equanimous, or one could say here, protect yourself by maintaining equanimity or impartiality, not passing judgment, and especially not rejecting the Mahayana by getting angry at it. So these things which were taught with intention by the Tathagata, Tathagata means the Buddha, of course. So the Tathagata taught multiple teachings designed to conform to the different dispositions of the disciples. And these things are not easy to understand. So, for example, while in fact there is only one ultimate vehicle, one final vehicle of Buddhism, the Tathagata, out of based upon a special intention, that is, recognizing the different capacities of different persons to be trained, taught three different final vehicles, Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, and Buddha vehicle, for these three different types of persons. So he taught in the sutras, you find passages where he explicitly said that there are three final vehicles, but these statements are not to be taken literally. Rather, they're not the definitive teaching on this subject. Rather, they're what is called intentional explanations which have an intention which is based in something other than what is explicitly said on the surface of the words. So this kind of teaching of the three final vehicles is merely a provisional teaching, or a teaching which the Buddha made out of that kind of special intention, whereas the teaching of one final vehicle is the definitive teaching. But that being the case, a person should not misapprehend these teachings of the one vehicle and three vehicles, misunderstand them, and disparage the prior teaching of one final vehicle. And so that's not the proper thing to do. One should not deprecate this teaching of one final vehicle. And if one doesn't understand the meaning of this, then if you just leave it alone, you'll be able to protect yourself from falling into anger towards these teachings or deprecating them.
Oh yeah. 다든다 계속에 타두 그때바 숨숨 비체를 세대 가르sun 거래서나 타두 그때바 찍도 세바당 타두 그때바 숨숨 비체를 타두 그때바서나 타두 년대지 그때바 타두 랑자지 그때바 타두 산자 그때바 숨문체 다 타두 년대 그때바 세리가나 년대지 람라마 쇼니 아니 타바토비 체도 아니 년대게 람마가 림바 신도 초람 조람 토나 공바 공람 림바 신도 되리 아니 년대 자준비 공바 토바 테잖아 토마 톱지담바 다다지 시와 나신이체니 랑주바 만제이나 사제 자준바 사제 자준바 동아지 부부 람마의 제와인다 사제 자준바 아니 함에도 냥알은 내와 테잖아 아니 리바 준세 인 바시만도 말류바 인장 대내 안에 산제 유콘방 라 대전 이람 남라시 왜 매바 타두기 특바 대내 타투바 대신도 란자양 안에 텐데 체니 란자그 남라야 슈데 아니 란자지 초람 통관람 토마 톱디가나 란자기 아니 하제냐데 용아지 분분 하마다 제와 대담바데 꾸지 두제 단도 잠바 아니 오르바 준체바 오토스 저기 와 인자 대내야 산제 공반라 토바 매 인자 타두기 특바 스가레와 다 하제 하면 니데라 탄주와 있나 상메 등안라 톱 하제데 제라 토바데 대내 강제 자좀바 아니 꾸지 두제 단나 아니 리바 준체바 시와 준체바 대내 아니 드젠라 주야 매바 인자 아니 타두기 특바
So now what is meant by a final vehicle or ultimate final vehicle here? In the interpretations of the differences among the vehicles, that's found in the Swatantrika Madhyamika and downwards, that is the non-prasangika schools of Buddhist philosophy, they posit three final vehicles. These, what is meant by final vehicle is that the practitioner enters into one of the three vehicles, the vehicle of the Shravaka, the vehicle of the Pratyeka Buddha, or the vehicle that leads to Buddhahood, the Buddha vehicle. And following those vehicles, they proceed through the five paths. That is, in all cases, the practitioner enters into the path of accumulation, the path of preparation or application. One can call that path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of cultivation, and then finally the fifth path of no more learning. Each of the vehicles has a different culmination or final outcome of of a person proceeding through those five paths. Now, in the case of the Shravaka, if they enter into they enter into the Shravaka vehicle and they persist in that practice, eventually they achieve the state of arhatship, and in that last life, as we've said previously, initially, according to this interpretation, they actualize nirvana with remainder. That is, during the course of their final life, they actualize nirvana, the extinction or termination of all of the mental afflictions together with their seeds. And then but there's still some remainder of the aggregates that they've carried with them or that they've taken up in the course of taking rebirth in that last life. So that remainder persists throughout the duration of the rest of that life. Then finally, at the end of that life, they enter into what's called nirvana without remainder, which in this Swatantrika Madhyamika and other schools' interpretation is the termination of the continuity of the created elements out of the aggregates, the 5 aggregates. So there's effectively a termination of the stream of the 5 aggregates of that person. And then after that termination, that continuity of that personal existence in a contaminated sense is extinguished or becomes extinct. And what is left is called merely the sphere of nirvana. You can't talk about it in terms of like personal existence of an arhat, a person as such. Rather, there's simply this sphere of nirvana. Now, the same thing applies to the Pratyeka Buddha. A person of that type will enter into the Pratyeka Buddha vehicle, and they'll proceed through the 5 paths. And they actualize nirvana with remainder, nirvana without remainder, in basically the same fashion as the person who follows the Shravaka vehicle. And then they finally achieve their final goal, which is that state of cessation. And then the third case is the person who enters into the Buddha vehicle and follows the path of the Bodhisattva, again following through the 5 paths. But at the culmination of that process of the path, then such a person actualizes the result of Buddhahood, which is significantly different from the way in which the 2 prior vehicles, their result is actualized. So according to these so-called lower schools, the Swatantrika Madhyamika, etc., they hold that there are, in fact, 3 final vehicles. That is, once one actualizes this, at the termination of the life in which one achieves nirvana, either through the Shravaka vehicle or the Pratyeka Buddha vehicle, then there's no further coming out of that state of nirvana without remainder, or that sphere of nirvana that one has achieved or actualized, so that there's no possibility for such people, for such persons, to now enter into, say, the Buddha vehicle and progress towards the achievement of Buddhahood.
Oh yeah. Tiba jidu seba tang, tiba tadu tiba sumdu sumbe, chima guangde, chima guangba di guangba karere sana, jomden de tadu tu sumba di, kansare, kanyang daba gyome bar shuwa, tetani, 아니 라나마바 양다바 저비 창주도 셈집이 투 메데 대단한 코에 군지 참제비 칠 강양다바 뛰면 바로 쉬와 sana 년도다 란자지 람 양다바 뛰면 바로 쉬와 통람 톱니 너와 다 되네는 봐 신도 야 가좀 톱니 아니 대전지 남나 쉬우데 라나마바 양다바 저비 창주도 셈집하고 투요아 말에 그봐 메데 아니 그와 군지 참제 비치를 쓰리가나 아니 가서래 풍부 주의 잡아 치와나 아니 풍부 주의 잡아 와 다시 나시잖아요 인자 나는 대단한 바 코위 군지 참제 비치를 어떻게 너데 장대 대바선 타도 대바선도서 뭐 공부한 것도 되래
So there's a sutra. There are sutras which express this idea of 3 final vehicles. There are sutras in which the Buddha has said that there are these 3 final vehicles, and what these sutras what they say or the explicit intention of them, that is the surface intention of them, is that when one proceeds through, say, the Shravaka vehicle, and at the point then they achieve, going through the 5 paths, they achieve the path of seeing, and at that point then they've extinguished some portion of the mental afflictions, and then they proceed through the other 2 paths, the path of, or they enter into the path of cultivation. In the path of cultivation, they gradually eradicate all of the mental afflictions that would cause continued rebirth within samsara. And so then when they've gone through the culmination, they've proceeded through the path of cultivation, and at the end of that path, when they enter into their last life, during the course of that last life, they actualize arhatship, the extinction of all of the mental afflictions together with the seeds of them, such that there's no way then for that continuity of personal existence, that is the stream of those aggregates, to take rebirth within any form of within samsaric existence in any way whatsoever. And therefore, if one follows the path in that way, there's no way that that person would be able to come out of that state of complete separation from samsaric existence, and then be able to, out of great compassion or love and so forth, they would not have the capacity to be able to return into the world and to develop bodhicitta, to cultivate the practices of the bodhisattva, and then proceed to the achievement of Buddhahood. So if you take those statements from that kind of sutra as literal and definitive, then it would be the case that such persons would never be able to leave that state of nirvana that they've achieved and enter into the path of the vehicle to Buddhahood. And therefore these such statements have to be interpreted as intentional statements, that is, statements which require interpretation in order to draw out the actual intention of the Buddha in making those statements.
Oh yeah, that digi tadu tebasum de chuba sonya de che. That tadu tebasum de songba de changde yinba. Jemden de ju gongba ma yinba de do chima ki. Teda gilana ma ba yanda ba zobe chanju du sem gena anu kowi jesu yirang wa chao se de donga ma de changde de. 어고선 대바서 나바샤바는 공바제 천이번에 뭐 어떤 말을 가세 디가세 강양한다바 깨면 발라 슈바네 나는 바 양한다바 저베 잔주도 셈집이 투메데 대단히 고유 주제 삼제비 7 사이데 다도 대바슴도 좋아대 단 노데 잔된도 제제되라 대다기 나나면 바 양한다바 저베 잔주도 셈게나 아노 고유 jesu 이랑와 차오 세데 다데 동아마 장된데 제제데 공방 좀 되지 공방 많이 봐. 나는 봐 양한다 봐 저기 자주 쌤전에 jesu이랑 지금 소화돼. 장된 저.
So then, however, that kind of statement, we can establish that statement which says that someone who has completely extinguished all of the faults is in that condition of complete separation from rebirth in samsara in a definitive and final way. We can establish that kind of statement is not a definitive statement, that is a final statement of the Buddha's intention. Rather, it's a provisional statement, a statement which needs to be interpreted in another sense in order to arrive at the definitive statement. Because in the actual sutra, that sutra itself, or the text, the complete sutra itself, there's a subsequent statement which says that such a person, if they
가데 대다 글라나메 봐 양다바 저위 창주도 셈게나 공도 샤베게 야란 대다기 나나메 봐 양다바 저위 창주도 셈게나 코위 jesu 이랑 차오
However, if such the sutra then continues and says, however, with respect to those Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, it's referring to them who have completely extinguished all of the faults, meaning they've actualized nirvana, such that nirvana in that way. If those this second sutra says if those persons elevate their minds and generate the wish to achieve unexcelled, true, perfect awakening, then they will rejoice in that. And this necessarily entails that persons who have achieved that kind of arhatship have the capacity to come out of that state of nirvana that they've actualized and develop bodhicitta, that is the aspiration to achieve unexcelled, true, perfect awakening. And therefore, that second statement is evidence, proof that the first statement that one cannot come out of that kind of state of nirvana and achieve Buddhahood is in fact a provisional statement and needs to be interpreted in a different way so as to arrive at the definitive intention of the Buddha in this exposition of the relationship between three final and one final vehicles.
背举出现。